Hi, I'm Kaylee with Movieguide, and today we are talking with Nick Shakoour, and we're going over his new book, Transformer, Awakening from a Spiritual Coma. So the first question would be, did you ever feel like you slipped into a spiritual coma?
To generally answer that question, here's the scary thing about slipping into a spiritual coma. It happens incrementally.
Oh.
And next thing you know, you're in it and you don't even know you're in it.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part. That's when you're far removed from God, from Holy Spirit, what Jesus provided, from family. You might be around family and friends, but you're not really there.
Yeah.
And this happens incrementally over time through left turns, detours in life, letdowns, disappointments, backstabbings, and all of a sudden you lose yourself. And so when that title came to me out of the blue, I thought, wow, I was washing my hands when the title of the book came to me. Actually, it was going to be called something else. It was much cheesier. And this title came, and then the Awakening from Spiritual Coma was in this blue neon alarm clock font. And I thought, what? Is this appropriate, God? It's like one of the first things I thought. And it was like, this makes sense. So I had to go in and gut the whole book and make it more like a superhero, action-packed autobiography, as opposed to this slow pace, very lovey-dovey tribute to God and people that have poured into my life kind of autobiography.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned the people that poured into your life. It's so funny because you read the first chapter and you would think that, depending on which way you read it, but I would think you would be the last person to slip into a spiritual coma because, your grandfather, hearing what he was like, how he was, and those are just, I think there was 2 scenarios that were in the first one that were just unbelievable.
He put himself at great risk in that country, and I'll kind of I'll allude to it like that to save a little kid after he was kidnapped by insurgents. And what happened after, as you've read, is just unbelievable. What he did, one man against many men with rifles, and he has one a suit of armor, which is God and the Holy Spirit. So, but you bring up a great point. It's like, why would something like that happen to someone like me? As if you look at the history of the upbringing and the kid, and they run in the chapters, like my family growing up with him was actually great. I didn't have a terrible childhood. It wasn't perfect, but it was filled with love. But because God wrote the last chapter for me, in essence, and after it came to fruition, in the last chapter, it's when all of that gets answered.
All ties in.
Why the spiritual coma had to happen in the first place.
Yeah.
And all these other things. So
you talked about in the first chapter, it talks about like you growing up in Beirut and the difficulties. First chapter starts off with bombings.
It's a very harsh description, but that's the Middle Eastern part of me. I wanted them to feel like they got hit in the back with a metal baseball bat the minute they opened the book up to start reading it.
Yeah.
And have them just starstruck, bewildered. What did I just get myself into? And I wanted them sucked right into the world. I wanted to open the book and fall right into it.
It definitely did that. Rocked the whole world with your testimony that came out a few years ago when that video went viral.
I expect that to happen. You don't, but that's crazy. It was fresh. It was fresh then.
Really?
Fresh.
I played it.
Over a year, but it was still, the encounters were still happening. And I just couldn't believe that God, as they say, was that good.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't believe it.
That encounter was absolutely beautiful. Where does this book fall in with that story? Like, is this backstory? Is this what happened after? Is this, the leading up to it? Like, how does this book fit in?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. It goes all the way to the encounter. That's the whole reason why I wrote the book. So early on, I sensed the nudge to write it myself, and it was this burden, and it was a strong nudge to, like, I turned away from 4 publishers that were offering very kindly to help me get this out there. Of course, there'd be editors involved and people overseeing it naturally, but there was a strong sense that, no, Nick, like, we're going to make this happen together, and I'll be there every step of the way, and I know you don't like to sit down on your computer and write, but you're going to do that. And then I enlisted the help of my cousin Caroline in Greece, who's an English teacher, and she's written a novella herself. So I told her, I want you to be my guardrails. I don't want you to write anything for me, but I want you to catch sentence structure issues, grammar issues. I want you to open up the toolbox of writers' tools for me. Like, I want to know how an M dash is used, why it's used. Yeah. What is a colon and a semicolon? What's the difference? Like, give me the paintbrushes that I need so that when somebody reads the book, they can see and hear me. And not only see that, but they can be me. Yeah. And see everybody else through my eyes. So I wrote the book, in essence, as if I was directing actors in a movie. And so the viewer gets to be me watching everything happen around them. But it leads up to the encounter. Then there's a chapter after that called, a few chapters after that called Spiritual Backlash, which it's the repercussions of what happens when you just go up to people and scream in their face about Jesus. They're like, yo, dude, what are you on?
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So is this your first writing venture?
I had written a short script before that, like for a short film, like a funny comedy thing. Yeah. Like a dark kind of comedy. But this was the first time that I was sitting down being like, okay, Nick, we're here to buckle up and do this the old-fashioned. You know what's insane? There was a church that I was attending in Texas. One gentleman came up behind me and he put his arm around me and he wanted to relay a message from God. And he said, I want to let you know I'm seeing something for you. And he had no idea I was even starting to write a book. And he said, it's a vision that God gave me to tell you. He said, it's a wheat field and it's modern day and everyone's using the machines to chop the wheats and put them all in the basket with their machines and load them and then use them to make, whatever foods. What he said, but for some reason, he said, you're in the field on foot and with no machine and you're walking through with like a wheat chopping device and you're doing it manually by hand because you're being very meticulous about which are the good ones that you want to sift. Yeah. And you're carrying them on your back, not even in this kind of machine that drives it back and forth. He said, you're toiling and sweating and everyone's laughing at you for doing something the old-fashioned way when you could just easily be doing it this way. And then as I'm writing the book, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's like, how's he like, what? And that's what this felt like. It was toiling and going through. I went through 8 formatters, by the way, to get this book to where it is now. Because each formatter before the 8 kept throwing it back in my face because their program for this book and no other books that they've ever done, because they've got amazing reviews. Yeah. The website I heard them through was messing up the formatting, like spacing of the words. So one formatter would take care of it, give it to me in worse condition. I'd give it to the next. It'll come back in me even worse condition. And it reached a point where my whole manuscript was basically like messed up. And because I kept having them do edits and catching little mistakes as they were formatting, I could never go back to my original manuscript anymore. Oh. 7th formatter gets it. His program is deleting letters from random words. Wow. And at this point, I'm 6 months in, by the way, almost at this point, just trying to format a book after a year. And I'm having like sweating. I'm having kind of depression. So I'm like, this book's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And eventually he threw it back at me. He said, bro, I can't do it. It's just, I don't know. Like, I can't handle this anymore. So finally I found an 8th one and he said, don't worry, I love handling people's mistakes. And he did an amazing job with it. It was a lot. It was a lot. And my mind always went back to that gentleman at that church saying, you're going to be sifting wheat the old-fashioned way because in the end, you're going to get the best meal possible out of it. Whereas people that are just throwing it in the machine, they're going to get the wheat that people shouldn't be eating. Yeah. But you want to make sure that you're giving out. Like, that's a crazy world.
Okay, so I want to back up and go to the beginning of this book. So you talk about your time in Beirut. Mm-hmm. Can you describe what it was like, your early childhood growing up in that place?
So this might sound bonkers, minus the bombings and the random gunfire and the random, they talk about drive-bys here in the state. Over there, it's like a parade of drive-bys. I did enjoy growing up there, and I always felt a sense of peace around me and my family, as they would say, a covering. And in hindsight, of course, I know that was because of my grandfather's connection to God and his devotion to Jesus Christ, mm-hmm. and him being spirit-filled. And the reason why I also enjoyed it is because my mom and dad always made me feel very protected. And I call them the super protectors in the book. Yeah. And there was always this sense of fun and play. And so living in Beirut, Lebanon was a place where neighbors knew each other, even neighbors that were like 10, 15 blocks away. Like everybody just knew each other. So when these incidences would occur with either bombings or civil wars, because we all had a sense of community that spanned, many, 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 many blocks. It was always like we were in on this together. We're in this together. So we're going to all help each other out. So, whether it was sleeping in the underground bunkers with hundreds of other people, we never felt a sense of danger from other people. We were all kind of in on this together, trying to escape this bigger threat that was happening.
Yeah.
So there's a strong sense of a tight-knit community. I mean, if you went to Beirut, strangers would invite you over to their house for dinner. They'd be like, come, let's have dinner and coffee afterwards. It's very much like that. There's a strong sense of community. So I had an enriching childhood growing up there, regardless of the madness that was happening.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Do you feel that, are there times in your life now where you're like, oh man, that's how I grew up. That's the Lebanese in me.
I think that's what happens. Like, so when I show up to either events like meet and greets or whatever, and, I'll have a handler that's provided for me at the time come and be like, are you okay, Nick? Like 2 hours later, I'm like, yeah, why? What happened? Oh no, I'm just checking to make sure you're okay. Why would I not be? Oh, it's been a lot of people. I'm like, oh, this is like an Armenian Lebanese wedding. Like, this is normal. Like, this isn't even 400 or 500 people. This is less than that. They're like, oh, and they'll laugh and they'll walk off. Okay, listen if you need anything. So I think I innately because my mom's Armenian, my dad is Greek and Lebanese. And so mixing all that together, it's like, I don't know how else to be. And then also growing up in Lebanon, and this sounds so bonkers, but even as a kid, and I didn't know to put a word to it back then. But as an adult, I can look back and say that I sensed that I was a child of God first and foremost. Like I was Nick, but I didn't have a word for it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I just felt like, oh, I'm Nick and I'm living in Beirut. And the ethnicity was sort of like a byproduct. Like that's the color palette that God decided to paint me in. But I knew deep down inside there was something way more vast than that as a kid. Like I remember sensing that. I just didn't have a word for it.
Reading through it now as, with an adult mind, you're like, yeah, that is what it feels like. That is what God feels like. And I don't have to put on any presentation or like just however you feel it. And seeing that you experienced that as a child and not even knowing him in a personal way, but that he was with you and was holding you and he gave you strength in your legs.
Yeah. I was already running and the missiles were coming down and that catchphrase, Grendizer take off. And it was this Japanimation cartoon that was translated into Arabic for Lebanon. And I loved him because he transformed into a spaceship and flew off. Like that was the character. And he was this sentient robot. So that's like the first thing that came to my awareness. And I felt like I was him.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you when inspiration strikes. And God works in all these mysterious ways to come in and give you this ability that you wouldn't have normally. Some people might say it's adrenaline. Yeah, I'm sure some of that's involved too. But again, a 6-year-old to run at the pace of adults, that fast. It's because I could like feel like the top half of my body was like, well, wait, hold on. I can't keep up, that kind of thing.
Wow. How do you feel that time that you felt like where you felt empowered in your legs, how did that compare to the encounter that you had in your adult life? Like, is there something where it felt like, oh yeah, I can look back now and that was just a taste of what?
There's a chapter in the book. It's called, this phrase came to me after it happened, the initial major encounter, radioactive love fire. And that's what came to me when I was like, this is radioactive love fire. This is what it, so that's just like, that's not even doing his work justice.
Yeah.
In describing what it was like. It was radioactive love fire, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, nuclear bomb goes off, you're burning alive, you feel the sensation of passing away, coming back to life, being dipped in an ocean, drowning, and then everything explodes, the liquid bubble around you dissipates, and you're just standing there and everybody's looking at you like, wow. And then I turn to everybody going, what? What are you guys looking at? And that's when they said, you received the Holy Spirit. And I realized I could hear myself speak. And the manner in which I was speaking and the manner in which it's like there was weight to every word I was saying. And I thought, this has never been like this before. I almost scared myself. I'm like, whoa, this is my voice? So it's just, and I go very much into detail as much as I could to describe exactly what the process was leading up to the encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And also how there was a spiritual entity, let's just say, as I'm driving to make a pit stop on set to have lunch and then go to the church conference. But on the way, there was a dark entity crawling up my leg during my drive. And all before going to the church conference, and people were like, dude, are you sure that? I was like, I am 100% sure. You want to call it low energy? You want to call it low vibration? You want to call it a lost soul? But I never thought in a million years I would come face to face with something that was trying to take over me, basically.
Yeah. And you said before, and it's in your book, the last person you would have thought to be talking about, like, oh no, it is an entity, or oh no, like I felt God come upon me, Like how has your family reacted? Because there's such a big difference when, before is
they're reacting to the Holy Spirit and they don't know what to do with it. And here's the deal, like people sometimes misinterpret that for you almost bragging about yourself, but that's the thing. Like even with this book, I don't see it as a career move. I saw it as a necessary thing to write about and do. And literally, I don't have a PR team. I kept hearing, I will be your PR. I will be your PR. And I ditched the whole, like, after deciding, like, I kept hearing, I'm like, I'm just not going to, like, pursue a PR team for this. And literally, things have been opening up. Like, it's insanity. What's been happening. Obviously, I didn't come here with anybody. I just been here with me and him. That's pretty much it. But people mistake that for you kind of bragging about yourself, but you're just bragging about him.
Yeah.
And my family's reaction to that was a little bit of shock, a little bit of, my mom said, they brainwashed you. They're going to steal all your money. Mom, no. I didn't join any like denominational thing. Like I didn't join any church, any non-denominational. I didn't join anything. Please stop talking about it. You're making me blaspheme. See what you're doing to me? Because she's Christian. She believes. My family's Greek Orthodox, but for them it was a he's at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
We believe 100% and we have faith. But what do you mean? What do you mean he's in you all around you? What is this? Like, Mom, you don't. Okay, please stop. Enough. Today, enough. So I had to start cooling my jets around people because from their point of view, look, I don't blame her. She's my mom. She's going to be worried about me.
Yeah.
Like, who are these strangers that invited you to construction workers from what? Because they were on set and I made friends with some of them and they invited me. And then I started making friends outside of the show. And I started to find myself hanging out with, like, I'm an actor on the show. I should be hanging out with the actors. No, it's construction workers. And you know what's interesting? Sweet lady by the name of Karen, where I'm going to be doing the initial book launch signing in Utah, Moon's Rare Books. We were talking on the phone after she got done reading the book. And I didn't even realize this. She said, Nick, isn't it interesting that it's the carpenters who led you to the church conference and you had the encounter with the Holy Spirit? And after a split second of thinking about it, I just broke down over the phone.
Wow.
This was like a few days ago. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's insane.
Wow. I didn't even put that. I just want to know, what kind of conversations or reactions do you hope your book will spark among readers who are grappling with spirituality or faith and kind of don't really know what to do with it, where to start, how to approach it?
It's tough because I was grappling for years. And at one point I even said into the sky, I said, God, you probably don't even exist. While I'm talking to God, telling me he doesn't exist. As if I existed before all of creation and he's not the one responsible for creating me. We say the silliest things sometimes when we're frustrated and angry. Why did you allow this and this and this and this and this and this to happen to me? Because if you were here, if you stopped it, it wouldn't have happened. And we kind of forget to count the many other blessings that he did give us. Like, I can still breathe. I can still walk. I can still see. I can still talk. I have hands. Some people don't have their limbs, and they're more thankful than me. So it just shows you this gratefulness, this joy comes from truly knowing him and nothing else. And because everything else is fleeting. But it's interesting because as I'm writing the book, there was never a sense of, I want this to happen for people or that. It was a strong sense of, it was like a directive almost from within my heart to invite the reader into my family, to have my childhood and go on the journey and experience life right beside me as it leads up to the encounter. And it was just that. This go on this adventure with me. And I want to invite you into my life that led up to this encounter. And I want you to experience it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
And see what actually happened, see what really happened. And it's just that. It's a strong sense of, that's why I have so many people in the book that I pay tribute to. Like in each chapter, I gave each person that's poured into my life a superpower. There's a chapter that's called My Superpower, and that entire chapter is really about Mr. Benton, my PE teacher who behaved like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. And he's the one who had me impersonate the faculty and student body after he discovered me doing it in his class. And he convinced the school principal to hold an assembly where all 2,000 students with the teachers that I have to make fun of would be there to watch me on stage as an 8-year-old kid. Elementary school. And I've been in the country for like, what, two years at that point? So, and his superpower is refueling your superpower. So everybody gets a little superpower that's written in italics. It was kind of like this kind of thing. So everything in the book is very like, go, go, go. Even the heavy parts or the sad parts, there's still, I've gotten feedback where it's like, but there's still joy there. And you bring humor to even some things that aren't funny.
Yeah.
But you seem to lighten it up. Because I don't want people to sit there and be like, I'm depressed reading this. It's supposed to be a celebration of what God can do in somebody's life.
Yeah. Well, just reading from chapter 1, I can tell you, it is encouraging, it is profound, it is challenging, it is convicting, it is so loving. I'm so excited to read the rest of this book, and I'm so excited to tell my friends about this book. Thank you so much for coming in today and for telling us about it. And it is out April 11th.
Anywhere you want to order books, it's available at Barnes & Noble, Walmart. It's going to be on Amazon. It's going to be on Google Books, Apple Books, hardback, paperback, ebook.
April 11th, and this is perfect time for Easter.
If you enjoy videos that follow your values like ours and you want to help us continue, go to movieguide.org/donate, because we're actually a nonprofit. You may not know that, but we're working in Hollywood every day to help families have more choices that follows their values. And also subscribe right now.